Forbes Books presents Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow. Transformation for a new and better world. Here's David.
Thanks for joining me for the second part of my conversation with Ben Carson Jr., the co-founder and partner of FVLCRUM Funds, and he's also the co-founder and partner of Interprise Partners, a leading lower middle market private equity firm with expertise in minority business investment. Ben, in part one, we mentioned your wife, Merlin, and we have a recurring theme on this podcast of talking to folks with strong partners in business and in life. How do you complement each other in terms of skills and how that synergistically adds to your success and your growth?
So my wife, I affectionately refer to as my retirement plan. So she's she's the one that everybody loves. Like, people will like me well enough, I suppose, but they meet my wife, and then all my friends are her friends, and she's absolutely phenomenal. So we met actually in the best place, church, and from there it's been wonderful ever since. But we have a true partnership in the sense of both the relationship as well as in the various business endeavors. She is extraordinary in every regard. One of the best executives I've ever seen if we're talking about the business side, but also a phenomenal wife and mother, and takes care of so many things that I don't even know exist, which allows me to go off and, invest in things and have fun and go traveling and keep trying to build whatever we can together. And we're very communicative around all of the various things that we need to manage because of that dynamic, and we try to support each other as much as possible. But she's probably the best thing that's ever happened to me. I don't know where I'd be if we hadn't met, and we were actually talking about this yesterday. We actually just bought a new house out here in Maryland, and we were just reminiscing about kind of where we kind of started and where we got to at this point and where we were looking to go from here. And we both realized it's a partnership at the end of the day. That's what we both set out to build. And I think it takes a lot of respect, a lot of communications. There's going to be, bumps along the way, of course, and not everything's always been smooth sailing. But I think the ability to talk through challenges and talk through issues is just as important as being able to appreciate all the good times. She's the love of my life, absolutely phenomenal woman. And, David, I'm glad you and her got some time to spend together. But she is the reason that we can do anything that we do. Without her, I wouldn't be able to function all that much at all. She takes care of absolutely everything and is probably the best part of everything that we've done so far.
Okay, that's great. In the private equity venture community, you're considered a leader, diversity, own growth, and sustainability. Let's talk about your secret sauce.
Sure. So, like I said earlier, we listen to a lot of people, and I'll actually share what I was just talking to one of the schools at Tufts and a couple of the students in there, and one of the things I shared was one of my mentors once told me there's three things that are required to be successful, and he said the first is to learn your craft and learn it well, be the best at what you do. And I think that's a fairly common piece of advice. The second thing he said was make friends. So I think that a lot of people have said your network is your net worth and all sorts of other things around making sure that you're meeting as many people as you can and also being nice to them. Everyone's still a human. Everyone's deserving of respect. Certainly they can lose that respect if they're a little bit out of control or crazy or otherwise, but be nice to people. That's absolutely possible, I think, no matter who you're talking to, and make sure that you're making those friends. The third thing that he said is stay humble, which I think, once again, no amazing secret there, but he said you do those three things and you'll be successful. And this is an individual who just sold his last enterprise for over $1 billion. It's his third exit. He's done very well for himself, and you'd never know it if you just ran into him on the street. Just a very humble guy, known by many as just a wonderful human being. So he's made his friends, and he's literally one of the best at what he does. And he cuts out time for me and has conversations with us. So I think, for me, if you're talking about secret sauce and leading the space or otherwise, there's just a couple people that have been absolutely instrumental in building my business philosophies. I do have a small book of truisms that I keep from all of those, and we've been blessed to be able to benefit from those truisms over time. I'm absolutely humbled by our mentors and the time that they've given us, many of whom are at the pinnacle of their careers. And I think that's allowed us to dodge many of the errors and mistakes that even they had to make as they were building their own empires. And we try to learn and listen to them as much as possible and not necessarily improve, but certainly iterate as times change to make sure that those lessons are as applicable today as they were when they were building themselves.
That's great. And in terms of the giving back, focusing on that, your Carson Scholar Program, be so kind to talk us through the program that sustainably educates people in the community.
Certainly, yeah. So Carson Scholars is a lot of fun. I've been on that board for probably maybe 12 years, 13 years or so. But it was started by my parents, and it started after there was a worldwide competition in STEM. So it was on science and math between 22 developed nations, and the United States came in ranked 21 out of 22. Number one was South Korea. The only country we beat was Jordan. And my parents thought that this was unacceptable and decided to do something about it. And that's what spawned Carson Scholars, where we give out scholarships to kids starting in the fourth grade, going all the way through up through 12th grade, based on their intelligence, of course. So there is a GPA requirement, as well as their community service, because we also want nice people, responsible people, accountable people to actually be recipients of this award. And that program is now in all 50 states. We gave out last year, I believe, about 2,000 scholarships, starting in the fourth grade, running all the way through 12th. We have an alumni network that's grown pretty large over the years. And we actually just had our 25th anniversary, which we were very excited about. 10,000 scholars on the 25th anniversary. So the program has been praised by many different organizations. We've won a ton of awards, and part of what we keep focused on is program expenses versus overhead. We have less than a 7% overhead expense. Almost every penny of every dollar goes straight to the kids, which was the goal. And about halfway through that 25-year history, we launched another sister program called the Ben Carson Reading Rooms. So we actually open in Title I schools miniature libraries where we have themes and all sorts of other things that encourage the love of reading at an early age. So we just opened, I believe, our 250th or so reading room across the country, and we're headed rapidly towards 300. And it's been absolutely wonderful to see that happen. But one of the things that I think differentiates Carson Scholars from many others, the money is always a great motivator for kids to be able to achieve scholastically. The other piece that we were very, I think, thoughtful about, and one of the reasons why I think the program has been so successful, is not only do these scholar recipients get a check, they also get a lot of attention. If you're a recipient of a Carson Scholar program, you get a whole ceremony with local press attention. You get a whole big banquet. There's celebrities, etc. It's a massive celebration. We do those banquets all across the country. So you actually have a lot of pomp and circumstance around the celebration of scholastic achievement and community engagement. And we hope that what this will do, and what we've seen from some of the third-party studies, is actually encourage at a very young age. So mind you, this scholarship can be won as early as fourth grade. Encourage a change in the mentality of many of the students that being smart and being engaged in community is a good thing and should be celebrated and should be encouraged. And what we've seen through these third-party studies is that when there's a Carson Scholar in the classroom, the GPA of the entire class will rise by as much as a point, which is absolutely amazing. So we're very excited about that program. It's been supported by everyone from Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation, the Heinz Foundation, to ABLE, et cetera, and has been an absolutely wonderful, we hope, dynamic in achieving more for this country as we look at focusing on the right educational best practices. More recently, we've started to also get involved in some of the educational thought leadership as we deal with how should we be encouraging STEM education in some of these underserved areas. And we're very excited about some of the work being done there as well. So thank you so much for asking about it. It's something we don't we don't get to talk about as much typically on these business conversations, but we believe that if you've been blessed on the business side or with anything else, it's your duty to give back and to share with the rest of society. And we've been very active in our philanthropy and very active in making sure that that philanthropy is directed towards our core causes to make sure that we can do our part to make the world a better place.
And along those lines, you're also a part of the Minority Wealth Commission, Mount Washington Pediatric Hospital. You give back to Tufts University Entrepreneurship Center. Just if you could hit on some notes as to why you believe these are fundamental and important causes to you.
Yeah, and that's a handful of them that, on the bio, you can only list a couple things, right? So we try to do as much as we can in the community. And we actually, as a practice for the firm, everyone who's part of our investment firm has to, each year, be involved in at least one board, community board. So this has to be a nonprofit board, not any of the for-profit boards. So they have to give back to their community, and they also have to win one award. So every year we want our own individuals to also be bettering themselves and participating in the community. We view that as an absolutely critical piece of their development and something that we found to be extraordinarily beneficial over time. We also encourage those individuals, if they find entrepreneurial endeavors of their own, we're happy to support them. So we've actually had several companies actually spin out from ours. But when we talk about the one specifically there on the bio, Mount Washington Pediatric, I'll start with, it's a hospital here in Maryland that is 50% owned by University of Maryland, 50% owned by Johns Hopkins, and they've been doing fantastic work in underserved communities for kids for years. They're one of the older hospitals around Maryland, and they have an intense focus on pediatrics, of course. So back when my dad was practicing, he was actually heavily involved with Hopkins and did rounds over there at Mount Washington Pediatric as well, since it's 50% owned by Hopkins. When I was asked to join the board many years later, I was only too happy to get involved there because they do all the right things in underserved communities. They're located in one of the worst neighborhoods in the city, and they've done a lot to give back there. So I'm honored to be a part of that initiative, especially given our focus on underserved communities. When it comes to Tufts, I'm a Tufts alum, so why would I not want to be involved there? I love entrepreneurship. It's been a passion of mine ever since elementary school. So I'm ecstatic always to be involved in anything with Tufts University. And more recently, it was actually last year, I also joined the President's Council. So being able to talk to guys like Tony Monaco, who is an absolute champion and has done so much good for the university already and so much for the broader community to really be that light on a hill, as Tufts is known. It's been phenomenal to be part of such an amazing intellectual and also curious and socially responsible community. So I absolutely love that. And, David, it brought us together. So I'm always really excited to do anything with Tufts. It's been absolutely amazing getting to know more people there and be part of that effort. When it comes to the Minority Wealth Commission, so I was asked to join that board last year and was only too happy to do so. Our whole focus for our funds and also for many of the endeavors that we get involved in on the family side is related to racial equity and minority issues. And when we talk about racial equity and we talk about many of the things that we've seen be successful in some of these communities, a lot of it is focused on the whole idea of give a man a fish versus teach a man to fish. So how can we encourage the right practices? How can we sustainably be altruistic in our community development efforts? What structures have been underutilized to bring about better community development practices and public welfare? And that's how we've built our various funds over time. And what we typically find is it's tweaks around the fringes. We don't have to reinvent anything. We just have to bring the right perspective where we've got we think, relatively good understanding of the capital markets. We think we've got a relatively good understanding of some of these groups that are focused on social issues, particularly racial issues. We think that we've got a relatively good perspective on some of the political landscape, the policies and regulations that affect the area, and how do you bring those together to accelerate what might have already been a plan and bring that to scale, maybe tweak it around the fringes. And what we've seen is absolutely astounding, watching some of the public-private partnerships that we've been involved in create jobs, create pathways to sustainable, greater than living wage jobs, watching businesses build communities where we take percentages of various revenue pools and devote them back to efforts in those communities to build out additional infrastructure or workforce training programs or educational programs, getting involved in healthcare disparities and dealing with some of those issues, which were also one of the areas that was very pronounced during the 2020 year. It's been absolutely amazing to see what a sustainable effort, which can be initiated by having a business, an anchor institution, actually reinvesting in that community. It's amazing to see what that can actually do. And that's a truly sustainable way to address many of these issues. So when we look at the Minority Wealth Commission and talk about wealth creation in underserved areas, it's been something we've been doing anyway. And to be a part of an initiative that's dedicated exclusively to that effort has been incredible. They're actually one of the endorsers of our fund. Their membership is made up of every major national ethnic association in the country. And it's a place where you can learn a lot about some of these initiatives that have been launched by many of these efforts. And that could be the Hispanic Chamber of Commerce, the Asian Chamber of Commerce, NMSDC, NAMAC. Many of their members are the largest groups in the country, and they all have their own perspective on certain issues. And if you're able to hear all those perspectives, distill them down to core issues, and then address those, one at a time, in a way that's more common sense oriented and takes into account many of the byproducts of those decisions, you can actually come up with some pretty interesting models. And that's actually how we got involved with the Aspen Institute and many of these other think tanks, in thinking about what are the best ways to start improving community outcomes if we're able to sustainably invest in those communities. So that's one that we're actually very heavily involved in, not only myself, but several members of the firm as well, as we look to encourage capital being allocated to some of these underserved areas and building true generational wealth for minorities.
Okay, thank you. Just one question, which I'm sure you'll expect is coming. Politically, your dad and your family, you're unique people with tremendous integrity. He's the nicest politician, exceedingly bright and gifted surgeon that come across so well. Survived 4 years of a previous administration as a cabinet secretary. Does he have any interest in running again?
David, I can't answer that. I don't speak for Dad. I certainly hope not, from my own personal side, which I'll tell him, and I've told him many times. That was an interesting last 4 years. I'm very comfortable being a private sector citizen. I think our family is very comfortable with that as well. But if he does run again or decides to do anything politically, we would be 110% supportive, just like last time. My hope and the reality, I think, are aligned. But you never know. It was same with the last time he ran. We had talked that December before he announced, and talked about running for office. Everything. I told him I'd prefer if he didn't, and I thought it was done. And then a couple months later, we were talking about him running, and he decided to do it. So things can change, things can happen. I think it's far more likely that there may be, more that we can do behind the scenes politically in terms of just encouraging the right behaviors and community development with initiatives like FVLCRUM and Minority Wealth Commission, some of the other things we get involved in, where we can not have necessarily the spotlight on activities and have things be less politicized. But, at the end of the day, Dad has an immense amount of, I think, integrity, like you said, also a keen sense of responsibility, and is very interested in common sense initiatives being advanced. So if he ever does run, I would support him 110%. My hope, though, of course, is that we're allowed to, kind of fade into the background a bit and get back to just doing what we do, which is hopefully, this social entrepreneurial endeavors where we can make the world a better place.
That's great. I'm just sure that a core group of supporters in America and the world that love your father may share your enthusiasm for that or not. But we appreciate you being so candid, Ben, on that issue.
Yeah, I think what we need is more just common sense people to go ahead and hop into the ring. Dad's got an interesting profile, but there's lots of opportunity in politics for more common sense, regular Americans to get into public office and actually represent the constituents of their geographies. So I would definitely encourage as many normal people to get involved as possible. I think it's always good to get those viewpoints in DC. And us living here in DC, like we were in government contracting long before Dad was in office, and we've always had our ear to the ground. But it's very interesting to kind of see the other side. And I think one of the things that we definitely think would be wonderful is if we can get back to a country for, of, and by the people. And right now, I don't know that we always have that. So I'm very interested always in talking more about those things, and being supportive of the people representing the people and seeing more of that dynamic play out. Certainly, there's a place also for people who have expertise in politics, and I think we need to be mindful that this country only works with an educated population and where all people's views are represented fairly. So we're very interested in always those conversations, and hopefully we'll see more Ben Carson types, more other wonderful people running for office in the near future and beyond.
Ben, I really appreciate you coming on the broadcast. It's really nice to have you come on and explain these things and how you're incrementally changing and making improvements into your community and into America.
Well, David, thank you for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure and an honor, and I will look forward to joining you again soon. Thank you so much.
To connect with David, go to davidradlow.com. David's book, Principles of Cartel Disruption, Accelerate and Maximize Performance, is now available wherever books are sold. This has been Sustainable Leadership and Disruptive Growth with David Radlow, a presentation of Forbes Books.